All right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. I know it is late in the day, particularly for those of you on the East Coast, and it has been a long day in front of Zoom. So we really appreciate your interest in sticking around for this seminar. We will be talking about pearls and pitfalls and SAEM Foundation grant submissions. I am Bryn Muma. I am an associate professor at UC Davis, and I am vice chair of the SAEM Grants Committee. Nick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Nick Moore from the University of Iowa. I'm the chair of the Grants Committee, and Bryn and I have worked together in this role for several years, and so we're excited to talk with you a little bit about the SAEM grant offerings.
Yes, our disclosures are listed here. None of them are particularly relevant to the current presentation. At the end of this brief 20-minute session, we hope that you will be able to identify SAEMF funding opportunities that align with your training, interests, and expertise, to describe key elements of a successful SAEMF grant application, and to identify resources available from SAEM to assist in preparing an SAEMF grant application. The portfolio is shown here. As you can see, it's grown over the years and is getting quite large. This is a lot to take in, so probably much simpler. Here is a QR code, and this will take you to the website that lists all of the grant opportunities, as well as the request for proposals and the instruction for authors and contact information if you have any questions about them. SAEM offers grants across all levels of expertise and levels of training. As you can see, most of our grants are centered in the fellow and junior faculty level, but we do have one grant for students. RAMS sponsors a $5,000 research grant, and then residents are eligible to apply for quite a few grants. The Academy of Diversity and Inclusion, ultrasound research, global emergency medicine, and the Innovations in Undergraduate Medical Education grant. Fellows have a few more, as well as a toxicology research grant. Fellows are eligible for a few more: the Education Project Grant, the Armed Pilot Grant, the Education Research Grant, which is a training grant, the Simulation Novice Research Grant, and the AWEM, the Academy of Women in Academic Emergency Medicine grant. Junior faculty, similarly, are eligible to apply for those grants, as well as the Emerging Infectious Diseases grant. And then specific to fellows and junior faculty, we have the Research Training Grant, which is one of our largest grants at $300,000. As we move into junior faculty into mid-faculty, the Research Large Project Grant becomes available. In terms of the color coding on this slide, the grants that are in blue are required to be mentored, meaning that the applicant applies together with a mentor who will guide them through the completion of that proposal. Those that are in purple have the option to be applied for as an independent investigator or as a mentored investigator. And that decision really depends on the applicant's level of training and their expertise in the area of the project. And then finally, the Emerging Infectious Diseases grant is our newest grant, and that one is our only grant that is available only as a non-mentored application.
Emergency medicine is a little bit unusual that we have so many foundation-supported grants for people who are developing research careers in emergency medicine. And because of that, many people in our specialty have had their career started either with an SAEM grant or another foundation grant. In addition to level of training, though, the SAEM grants are focused in several content areas. And one of the ways that you might decide which grant you want to apply for is, in addition to thinking about your level of training, thinking about the content that you're going to be submitting. On the top of this slide, the RAMS, ARMED, the Research Training Grant, and the Large Project Grant comprise what we consider our general emergency medicine grant mechanisms. Now, there are a lot of applicants who have, for instance, an ultrasound-focused project or a toxicology-focused project that they also would apply through one of these mechanisms, not simultaneously, but would develop an ultrasound project, for instance, to apply to the Research Training Grant, and that is certainly permissible. We have some grant mechanisms that are focused on specific content, on education, or we have a new infectious diseases grant or a toxicology grant. And then we also have a suite of grants that are collaborative grants between the SAEM Foundation and one of the SAEM academies. And those are listed on the slide as well. So each of these grant mechanisms have a slightly different focus. They have a slightly different goal. They have a slightly different, certainly different duration and different amount of funding, so a different scope of project, and really trying to figure out where, based on your career trajectory, based on what you've done before, and based on what you're interested in, where you should be applying is one of the goals, I think, of this talk. We, in addition to those co-sponsored grants with the Academy grants, many of those grants require Academy membership for eligibility. So all of the grants from the SAEM Foundation require membership and active participation in the Society for Academic Emergency Medicine, but the Academy grants additionally require some Academy participation as well.
So if you are thinking about applying, now is the time to do it. Now's the perfect time to start thinking about gather some ideas from the meeting, start identifying mentors, and start putting together an application. Applications opened May 1st for the current cycle, and they are due August 1st. Starting in September, starting in August, they'll undergo administrative review. And then the review process takes place in September and October, with acceptance letters, award notices sent in December for funding to begin the following July. There are typically updates that come out between now and when the grants are due. So please check your emails. I know we get a lot of emails from SAEM, but any updates to the grants will come out via the SAEM listserv announcements and will be posted on the SAEM Grants Foundation website. So please keep an eye on those moving forward.
The SAEM grants mirror the NIH grant process. And that's true in the application process, it's true in the formatting, it's true in the review process. And so when we talk about application elements, those application elements are very similar to what you would see required for an NIH grant. We divide the application into several categories or into several portions. The first is the specific aims, and we'll go through these in a little bit more detail. The second is the research strategy, the candidate statement, bio sketches, letters of support, and then there's a training or mentoring plan for mentored grants. And Bryn had talked about how some of our grants are mentored or could be mentored grants. The first section that we're going to talk about is the specific aims. And many of you may have been to a grant training program before, grantsmanship seminar. SAEM has a grants workshop, which is very, very good. And I encourage many or all of you to do that if you haven't already. But the specific aims page is really the heart of the grant. That's really the reviewer's introduction to what problem you're trying to solve and how you propose that you're going to solve it. The specific aims page in most cases is what's going to take the majority of the time of your grant development. That's where your collaborations are going to become clear. A specific aims page is one page, not more than that. And that one page really is going to set up the critical need that your project is trying to solve. SAEM grants, and really most grants, should be limited in the number of aims. For the most part, SAEM grants should not be submitted with more than 2 to 3 aims, and it's okay to submit with fewer than 3 aims. And a big part of this is developing hypotheses. And that's really the way that you communicate to your reviewers and the review panel what specifically you're going to do, what you're hoping to see, and whether you're right or wrong, how that's going to influence the science. The specific aims page classically has an organization where you lay out what the specific critical need is that you're trying to solve. You set up an objective, and your objective is going to be what you're trying to accomplish more globally, but specifically what you're trying to accomplish with the project that is part of your proposed application. You typically will state a central hypothesis, and in some cases will also state working hypotheses for each of your aims. But really your specific aims are the questions that you're trying to answer, are the activities that you're engaging in, before you lay out what your expected outcomes are and how your project is going to make the world a better place.
The next major section of the grant is the research strategy. This is typically divided into three main sections: the significance, the innovation, and the approach. And this is really your time to expand on those specific aims. If you think of the specific aims as the heart and the backbone, this is everything else. This is where you fill in the details and you really tell the reviewers the story of what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, why it's important, and how it's going to impact the field in the future. It's because you typically have somewhere between 5 to 12 pages for this. It's really important that you organize your proposal. These three subheadings are required, but it would really encourage that you outline your proposal and create subheadings that are appropriate for your specific study. We really want to guide reviewers through your proposal with those subheadings. Make sure they understand the flow of the research as well as the analysis plan. If possible, it's really nice to put a conceptual diagram in your proposal that outlines the entire theme of your proposal. It's important to include tables or other images to really break up the text and bring the proposal to life. You're certainly allowed to use half-inch margins with relatively small font, but keep in mind that that can be hard on the eyes. So the more you can break it up with some white space and some tables and some figures to tell the story in multiple ways, the better your grant may be received. It's also really important to include an analysis plan in your grant. I think sometimes we focus so much on the initial study design that we forget to include a detailed analysis plan, and to really work with our statisticians to make sure that analysis plan is as well thought out as it can be prior to submission. And finally, it's really important to show a realistic timeline, to show that you've thought through when during the grant period each of the activities you've proposed will take place, and just to make sure that you can fit it all in and that doing the study that you've proposed on the timeline of the grant is feasible. All proposals have limitations, and it's really important to just identify these yourself. If you don't point them out, the reviewers will. So it's better for you to address those limitations, address what you anticipate as concerns in your study, and then propose solutions and propose backup plans. This will demonstrate to the reviewers that your study is well planned and feasible, and it's worth investing in.
The candidate statement is a part of the mentored grants, which are most of the SAEM grants. When we think about the evaluation criteria for any of these grants, one of the evaluation scored criteria is the quality of the candidate. And so this is your real opportunity to explain what you've done before, how the proposed project fits into your overall research, and really where you intend to go in the future. This is your chance to show why you're the best person to do this project. And it is really important to tie this to the rest of your work and to where you're intending to go in the future. You also have a personal statement that's part of your bio sketch. I'm not talking about bio sketches here, but in the personal statement, that's another opportunity for you really to provide the context for who you are, why you're the right person to do this study, and where this fits into your career. If you've had gaps in training or employment, this is a good place to put that. One of the scored criteria for SAEM grants is SAEM involvement. And so the candidate statement or the personal statement are both good places to elaborate on that.
And speaking of bio sketches, that's the next piece we're going to talk about. So for those who are not familiar with the term bio sketch, it is a biographical sketch, and it's essentially your CV put into a condensed format that's used by the NIH. And because the SAEM Foundation mirrors the NIH in our general review process and approach to the application, we also use the NIH BioSketch rather than a CV. Of note, we use the current NIH BioSketch format, which is changing on May 25th of this year. So please pay attention to go to the NIH website to get the latest version of the BioSketch. As Nick mentioned, it's really important that you tailor all of the biosketches to the current application. Even if you as the applicant tailor your personal statement to the application, it's really important that those from your co-investigators and your consultants and all the biosketches included in your project are really tailored to this application and talk about why each co-investigator and each consultant is part of your project and what they will be contributing to your project, why they are the right co-investigator or the right consultant to be on this project. I think this is probably the biggest pitfall we see in biosketches, is that we will receive a personal statement that was clearly written for another grant or another topic in another area, and really doesn't convey to the reviewers why this person was selected to be part of the research team. One of the scoring criteria for these grants is the candidate and the investigators and the research team. And that score really comes from the information we have in the biosketches. Similarly, the contributions to science section of the biosketches should highlight those contributions that are most relevant to the current project. They should really show how you and your collaborators are well prepared to conduct the project that's being evaluated right now. The relevance could be in the content, but it could also be in the methods or another aspect of the prior work. So if you are an expert in clinical trials or an expert in qualitative methods, you can certainly highlight studies where you've used those methods, perhaps in a different topical area. One question that comes up frequently, particularly from more junior applicants, is, can I include abstracts on my biosketch? And the answer is yes. And another concern we frequently hear is that I don't have a lot of publications. Is this going to hurt me? Or I don't have relevant publications. And certainly you should put in whatever you have, with the understanding that we realize that many of our applicants are junior, and we expect that your biosketch may not take the full 5 pages that the NIH allows, and that is completely fine. This is your chance to show what you've done and sell us as to why you're the right person for this grant.
All right, we're down to the last 2 minutes, so we're going to move through the last part here quickly because I want to make sure that you have time to ask some questions if you'd like to. Letters of support are an important part of the application. You should have a letter of support from anybody who will be contributing to or supporting the project. If they're giving you anything, including their time, including resources, they should be in here. And really, it's your way of communicating to the committee that they've really agreed to do that.
And finally, for any of our grants that are being submitted as a mentored application, a training or mentoring plan is required. The exact format varies slightly between the different categories, so please read those detailed instructions for authors. But in general, the training and mentoring plan should include detailed objectives and a timeline that reflects formal and informal coursework, research team meetings, and career development. And it's really important that anything in the training and mentoring plan, those activities, align nicely with the research activities.
We have a number of resources that are available on the SAEM website. We have the grant writing workshop that we mentioned early on. We have several webinars for applicants that are available on the website. And if you have other specific questions, please feel free to reach out to us.
And here are our email addresses, as well as the general email for the SAEM grant staff. We are always available to answer questions and support you in the application process. Does anyone have questions that we can answer right now?
Hopefully we'll be receiving applications from everybody who's on the call. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Joining us.